Welcome to On My Mind Monday. Today is Monday, March 10th. Going to talk about a few things that are just on my mind today. I don't have as much time as I have had in weeks past, so I'm going to hit some of this pretty quick. But the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you to everyone who's been so encouraging to me to just continue this little stream of consciousness show that I do every week. Just sharing just a few things that happen to be on my mind. And of course, it's funny because so many things happen during the week. And at first I think, oh yeah, that's a big deal. But then as the week goes by, it just kind of leaves. It kind of comes and goes. And so when you hit things on Monday, you're going to get specific types of information, I'm sure. There's a lot of things that happened during the last week that I'm probably just not going to hit on because other stuff has happened since then. And so, those are things to consider. The first thing I wanted to do, though, is just pay a very short tribute. Not long ago, we lost Judith Lindsay, who was a friend of my mom's for 50 years. She had been a friend of our family longer than most of my brothers and sisters have been around, and I was small when the Lindsays came into my parents' lives, and so they had just always been a part of our lives and a part of family gatherings and a part of just the kind of the fabric of the Sayre family. So Lisa and I had an opportunity to go up for her funeral service on Friday, and it was good to see folks. We were only able to be up there for a short period of time, but rest well, Judith Lindsay. You are entering into the joy of your master because you've run a good race. So I just wanted to say that very, very, very quickly. That was just one thing that was on my mind. Also, getting into some of the geopolitics of the world, I know there have been a lot of discussions as to, what we're doing with both Ukraine and Israel. Of course, I've been very happy with the way that the current administration, the president specifically, has responded to what's going on with Israel and Gaza and that kind of thing. And I think he's spot on. He's doing exactly what needs to be done there. I wish I could say the same thing for Ukraine, but he seems to be, I think maybe he's trying to be Mr. Deal Maker and all that kind of thing. And when maybe that's not what this season calls for. I don't know. But I will just say it's hard to watch, and I know that there are discussions about should the United States even be funding anything over there at all. Some people want the funding to stop and all this kind of thing. The president and other members of the administration keep pushing out this $350 billion that we've sent over there, and I would love to see an accounting of that because there is no reason to believe, first of all, they've been given $350 billion. Certainly, a lot of what we're giving them isn't even money. A lot of it, I think I've even mentioned this before, has been things like munitions and tanks. And this is a lot of old stuff that we're not really using anymore. And so if we have the ability to compromise a global adversary like Russia, at least in the past, we consider them an adversary. I'm not real sure that the current administration does. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm kind of an old school Reagan Republican. And I don't simp for the Russians. Let's just put it that way. The Russians are clearly in the wrong. And one of the things that I have seen happening through a lot of social media and that sort of thing, and we've seen Russian bots behind this. We've seen just this disinformation campaign that has really gone in to try and undermine what the Ukrainians are doing or undermine the United States' support for Ukraine. Just a lot of these things are all out falsehoods. And one that caught my attention, of course, with a big one, because of course I like cars, I like sports cars. You can see a little Ferrari in the background here. That happens to be an F12 TDF. I've got another 812 Competizone Lego set that I got for my birthday. I'm into cool cars. But there was this thing that was put out about how the first lady of Ukraine went and spent over $4 million on a Bugatti Touran, and and that turned out to be just a bald-faced lie, complete misinformation. And we've seen all kinds of these things. It just made up in order to just kind of undermine the Ukrainian effort. The fact of the matter is, yeah, Ukraine has had all kinds of problems. We don't deny that, but they are a democracy. Their president has a higher approval rating than ours does, and their constitution does not allow for having elections during wartime. This is a war that they did not bring on themselves. This was something where the Russians have come in to take territory. The Russians have proceeded to torture, rape, kidnap, and murder innocent people. There is no ambiguity on this, and anybody who's trying to make it so really needs to put their pom poms down, because it seems like they're probably rooting for a specific political side here in this country that is really sad. It's really sad to watch. But that said, we're seeing some of that. Again, there can be discussion as far as what kind of support or not we want to offer. But I wish we were doing better there. Let's speak to a little bit more politically before I get out of that. One of the things that I'm seeing that seems to happen a lot, and that is when a new administration comes in. Of course, they want to do all these things to please their base, and we saw the last administration, they came in and they were firing people for not getting a vaccination. Right? They were promoting all kinds of the kind of DEI stuff that was really not just kind of being nice to people stuff, but they were jamming it down people's throats. They were doing all kinds of negative stuff, and it came around to bite them in the butt, especially when people were really voting for a return to normalcy back then. And what did they get? Right? Well, in this case, people have voted for tighter borders, right? We want our borders secure. We want to root out fraud, waste, and abuse. We want those kinds of things. But people are also voting regarding the economy. Well, over the last 30 plus years, 35 years, only 2 presidents have had negative impact on the stock market in their first month in office. In fact, within their first 2 months. Now, one was Obama, and he came in during the middle of that bubble in just that recession, the Great Recession in 2008. So you kind of see that maybe that was him. But the other is actually this time around with President Trump, where the stock market is reacting really, really negatively. And what you have to be careful of is people can take some short-term pain, but if they're seeing their retirement go up in smoke, which is where the stock market really hits, and they're seeing higher prices and higher inflation that is not going to be relieved with regard to these tariffs. They're seeing both of those things, even though there have been a lot of positive things that have happened. The GOP is going to get its butt kicked in the midterm elections if the economy can't get turned around. And in a place where people feel it. And it doesn't mean necessarily that every policy is good or bad or anything like that. It's just the way people feel. And so I just want to caution folks, let's not overreach, because we don't want this wild pendulum swing back to what we saw in the Biden administration. At least I sure don't. So that's just something to consider. And that's been something that's on my mind, because I've seen these shifts my whole life. And I've seen the way these kind of things work. And my concern is, of course, where there's an action, there's the equal opposite reaction. And that could be dangerous. So anyway, there's that. Last week, I talked about 70 Christian men in Congo that were beheaded, 70 of them. because they would not renounce their faith in Jesus, and they would not submit to Islam. Well, the news just keeps on coming. It's getting worse. More and more murdered in Congo, and we're now starting to see with the new government in Syria, the Assad regime was toppled, and that by and large was a good thing. Assad was a butcher. He was a murderous dictator. He was horrible, but he also sort of left the Christians alone. Well, the Islamist government that has come up in his place, not so good. And many Christians have been murdered. And a lot of times, like I mentioned last week, people don't think about it because of where we are in the West. But Christians are being murdered worldwide on an amazing scale. It is horrifying to see. And so I pray for my brothers and sisters in Christ who have real challenges to face. They're not looking at necessarily what political candidates they like or those kinds of things. They're looking at the loss of their lives because of the gospel, because Jesus is Lord. And so that's just something that's been on my mind as well. And that's probably the heaviest thing to me. On the flip side, the lighter thing, and what's on my mind, because it just kind of has happened, my Pittsburgh Steelers, right? I know that's a pretty wild swing. My Pittsburgh Steelers are making moves. Hopefully they'll be getting a quarterback within the next 24 hours, but they have gone ahead and signed star wide receiver DK Metcalf and also veteran Pro Bowl corner Darius Slay. So they're making real moves, and it's really cool to see. I'm also glad that the one backup quarterback that they had went to the Jets, so the Steelers don't have to worry about that anymore. I know there were a lot of Steelers fans that somehow wanted him, and he's a good kid, great kid, but just not NFL starter capable in my opinion. So anyway, those are the things that have been on my mind, and I know this was a shorter one this week, and maybe not as in depth, but I appreciate everyone who has encouraged me, even those who have said, "Hey, I don't really always agree with you, but I appreciate what you're doing." So that's good to hear as well. Others have said, "Hey, make sure you keep doing this. Don't stop." I really like hearing it. So I'm glad. Thank you very much for your continued support. And with that, I'm going to sign off today, Monday, March the 10th. Wow. And we will see you next Monday.